In this video, I'm going to answer the question, should I ever ask my vendor to lift their reserve price? Should you ever ask your vendor to lift their reserve price? If your vendors are looking to set their reserve at an incredibly competitive number, arguably potentially too low, which gives you no legal protection, then I would be open to asking them to lift their reserve. You're probably thinking, why would you get the vendor to lift their reserve? Because then you risk not selling the property. This is going to make sense as I continue to explain. Let's say, for example, you believe the property's value sits between $1 to $1.1 million. Let's say, for example, your vendors want to set their reserve at $1 million or $1,050,000. And we've got 5 bidders on the property ranging between $950,000 and $1,050,000. There's always a possibility that when the auction stops, the highest bidder is bidding stronger in bigger increments than all the other buyers. The underbidders all say that they're out, and you feel as though you can extract much more from that highest bidder, but not by the underbidders pushing them up, but by you walking the floor and or entering to a negotiation with them. Here's what I mean. Let's imagine the reserve is set at the initial $1 million that the vendor wanted to set it at. Bidding starts at $900,000, another bidder jumps in at $920,000, then $940,000, then $960,000, $970,000, $980,000, $990,000, $995,000, $1 million, $1,005,000, $1,010,000, and then a bidder jumps in at $1,050,000, and you announce the property on the market and selling because it surpassed the reserve price of $1 million. You've got this temptation to let the market know you're selling as soon as it does, and then all of a sudden, at $1,050,000, no one else jumps in because that bidder bid much larger increments than the other bidders. The other bidders are now out, and you sell for $1,050,000. And you're left there scratching your head, reflecting and wondering, hang on a second, if I negotiated with that $1,050,000 offer afterwards or during the auction, could have I got more from them? That's a question and a reflection you want to avoid. So how do you avoid it? Well, let's say, for example, that same situation transpired. The reserve was $1 million, the bidding started at $900,000, and then went $920,000, $40,000, $60,000, and so on, up to $1,010,000, then $1,050,000, bang, knockout bid. Even if you don't announce the property on the market, the reserve is still $1 million. So what you can't do is walk up to the highest bidder and tell them the reserve because it's $50,000 below what they bid. But if your reserve was $1,150,000 because you asked your vendor to up their reserve in the first place, you can look that highest bidder in the eye and say, great news, you're in front at $1,050,000. My vendors are at $1,150,000. For you to buy the house right now, are you willing to pay that number? And then it's all yours. There's a $100,000 gap that they feel they need to close. There's a $100,000 gap that you have got the right to try to close while being very blunt on the reserve price and maybe physically sharing the signed reserve with them. Very powerful, in fact, to share that piece of paper. So you've got two options. Get your vendors to lift their reserve before the auction starts or keep it at the lower number. Just remember, because by the way, I know what you're thinking. If I ask my vendor to lift the reserve to $1,150,000 before we start, what if the bidding goes to $1,020,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 and stops and they refuse to take it? They refuse to shift. They were initially going to set it at $1 million. We got them at $1,150,000 for negotiation leverage with buyers afterwards, just in case. Now they won't even take $1,050,000. Then 3 weeks passes, they end up taking $1 million, so they lost $50,000. What if that happens? Well, what you do there is, when you get commitment from your vendor to lift their reserve, you get triple commitment that they're actually going to flex back to the initial number they were going to set it if you think it's in their best interest. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, let's lift the reserve to $1,150,000 just in case for negotiation leverage. But if the auction stalls around $1 million, I just want to confirm that you'll be open to taking that number. Yes, I would. Are you sure? Because I'd hate for us to make a mistake and reject $1 million and take less later. Yes, Brent, I will take it. Double, triple commitment that they will fall back to that number if you think it's in their best interest. So there we go. The answer to the question, should I ever get my vendor to lift their reserve?